This is Kurtop with you, and these are 100 artifacts that scientists don't want to show to the public. A camp that isn't on the maps of Poland, the Szydłówek and Kork-Marka districts. On the navigator, it's just an empty clearing. On the spot, there's grass, a straight glade, and silence. It would seem that's all. I overlay archival aerial photos, Luftwaffe and post-war images, and the picture changes. 2 rows of rectangles, a path ending at a small clearing, and ditches along the edges. This is the classic layout of an auxiliary camp fully dismantled before retreat. Where the path ended in the old photo, a stone protrudes from the grass. There's gravel scattered around. This setup is typically placed near a loading ramp. Off to the side is a dark strip of soil with melted glass and brick shards, evidence of furnaces and high heat. At the field's edge, there's barbed wire and a ceramic insulator from a communication line. Beneath the moss, a thin aluminum tag with a prisoner's number and a small Siemens &Halski plate from an electrical panel are found. Everything comes together into one picture: housing, production unit, security, drainage, and access to the dead end. There are no showcase artifacts left in such places that look good in museums. The entire historical picture is created by small details. The tag indicates that there were people here with numbers. The manufacturer's plate shows equipment was present, indicating accounting and order. The dark earth strip indicates furnaces, chemicals, a ramp, and a dead end for shipments. When these details come together, nothing turns into a specific destination. Now briefly about the method. We combine 3 layers: archival aerial photos, a terrain model, and objects from the ground. The aerial photo gives us the geometry, where the barracks stood and where the path went. The terrain confirms micro shifts in the soil, straight corridors, the site, and ditches. The objects put the final point, confirming that something really happened here. Why have camps like these vanished from modern maps? They weren't simply abandoned. Local farms took over. Boards became sheds, gravel was used for roads, rails were scrapped, and papers burned. The train with Nazi gold. The legend of the train with Nazi gold is one of the most intriguing stories connected to the end of World War II. According to this legend, in the final days of the war, when Nazi Germany was on the verge of defeat, a train loaded with gold, jewels, and works of art was sent from Breslau, now Wrocław, Poland, toward the Owl Mountains, where, according to rumors, there were underground warehouses and bunkers. This train reportedly vanished without a trace during the war's chaotic final days, leaving many questions. Some versions claim that the train was hidden in one of the many tunnels in the Owl Mountains area, the entrances and exits of which were then blown up or sealed to hide the treasures from the approaching Allied forces. For decades, treasure hunters, explorers, and historians have tried to find the lost train using both historical data and modern technology. Despite numerous expeditions and searches, no convincing evidence of the train's existence has been found. However, from time to time, new reports about possible discoveries appear in the media, reigniting interest in this mystery. Altai mummy, Altai burial mounds, Pezerek. Thanks to the ice, the skin of a person about 2,500 years old was preserved, along with nearly faded tattoos on it. They were studied again. Scientists examined the images under different lighting, analyzed the pigments, and reproduced the techniques on models. It turned out something unexpected. More than one hand worked on the tattoo. On the right arm, deer and large cats are depicted with fine lines and precise anatomy. This shows a master's skill level. The left side is simpler and rougher, likely done by an apprentice. This is the first convincing case where several artists are identified on one body. The pigment is regular soot. The tools are a single needle for outlining and a comb, several needles on a bar for quickly making dots and shading. Such a combination explains the depth and texture of the lines under a microscope. In some areas, mummification incisions cut through the designs. They weren't preserved just for tattoo rituals. They were part of daily life. Symbols show status, group ties, or individuality. An Iron Age community structure is visible in skin markings. There are masters, apprentices, and a demand for complex body ornamentation valued in life, not after death. Subtitles. Secret tunnels under London. During construction work in London, A forgotten network of secret tunnels running beneath the city was discovered. These underground corridors, according to researchers, were used by the military and government agencies during World War II, both for protection from German bombings and for conducting secret operations. The tunnels extend several kilometers under the city center, creating a complex network that once acted as a hidden route for moving people, documents, and holding secret meetings. Some of these underground passages lead to buildings of strategic importance, including military headquarters and government bunkers. The discovery confirms long-standing rumors and legends among Londoners about a vast tunnel network under the city. Until now, most of these underground structures have remained unexplored due to their classified status and restricted access. Archaeologists and historians say this discovery is important for understanding how London protected its infrastructure and key figures during the war's most intense years. Inside the tunnels, remnants of old communication equipment, military ammunition, and even personal belongings were found, making them a valuable source for studying everyday life of that time. Research and preservation of the tunnels continue, promising to uncover more secrets about life and defense in the British capital during the World War II. U-boats are now in 3D. We're used to seeing submarines in old photos, silhouettes, and legends. Now everything is different. Submarines are already being counted like multi-beam architecture. Sonar, photogrammetry, underwater laser, and a Type 7 or 11 hull unfolds on the screen down to the rivets. You notice small details that reveal the whole war. The main thing you see on real models is the damage. The stern of one boat is ripped open like a can of sardines. A depth charge exploded near the rudder, blowing out the plates and hull. The crack follows the seam, clearly showing the shockwave's direction. This is not speculation. 3D reveals the metal's geometry clearly. The other breach is at the bow below the waterline with a nearby cable mark. They hit a mine anchor, then the destroyer finished it with several shots. These things were once guessed from eyewitness accounts, but now they're visible. The key detail is the hatches. On many submarines, they froze in place. Some are open where the crew tried to escape. Others are closed and jammed. Air bubbles and sludge inside indicate it sank quickly. Propeller markings, conning tower shape, and periscope housing all easily link the submarine to its departure date and last radio contact. It then becomes clear how the last mission went, the base, patrol area, and where it was lost. In reinforced sections, initial failures like misalignment from overloading, torpedoes, rudder damage, depth issues, or a broken drive can make the submarine a stationary target. Finally, the condition of the hull shows how it rests on the seabed. Paint stripped along the edges, growths, sediment streaks along the side. These signs clearly show where the current pulled, what broke off first, and which elements detached after sinking. All of this becomes interesting to us because now we can study old military equipment in great detail, even the ones that are stored deep underwater. Now we can recreate the moment the submarine was lost and show what a naval battle looked like in the 1940s. And we can compare all this with the archival documents that we still have. Almaznaya Igla, Anabar. In spring 2014 at the Anabar Placer in northern Yakutia, Russia, a gold prospector found not sand, but a tiny transparent needle the length of a pinky fingernail in his pan. Diamonds almost always crystallize with facets, but here was a perfect cylinder without a single edge. The find was called the dinosaur-era sewing needle. At the Yakutsk Institute, laser spectroscopy and an electron microscope confirmed the sample was a diamond. However, its surface had an ultra-thin film of titanium nitride and cobalt link, a protective coating used on synthetic crystals grown by the chemical vapor deposition method. They found the source using the alloy's marking. In the late 1990s, the Yakutsk Research Institute made diamond thermocouple probes for measuring the temperature of steel in smelting ladles. During testing, the probe cracked and a fragment was discarded. Spring floods eventually washed it into an ancient clay layer. That's exactly where the prospector found it. Scientists quickly determined its real origin, but the story turned into a myth, a local legend. Every spring, gold diggers hope to find another artifact like that. Books bound in human skin. In the 19th century, there was a rare but real practice in Europe and the United States. Books were bound in human skin. Experts call it anthropodermic bibliopygy. Literally, it means a book bound in human. The skin was usually taken from executed criminals or anatomical theater patients. 1,837 Boston, United States of America. Bandit James Allen requested his skin be used to bind his memoirs after his death. The cover reads in Latin, "This book is made from Allen's skin." 1830, Devon, England. Rat catcher George Cadmar poisoned his wife. After execution, his skin bound a John Milton poetry collection. 1882, France. A countess who died of tuberculosis bequeathed her skin to a fan astronomer, Camille Flammarion, to use for the first copy of his book, Terre du Ciel. Regarding entire collections, Harvard Library in the United States has at least 3 such bound volumes. One 17th century treatise contains a note about Jones Wright, whose skin was removed on August 4, 1632. The John Hay Library in London confirms the Vesalius Medical Atlas with a brown human cover exists. The motives were different: a memory of a crime, a rare souvenir, and scientific interest. Legally, it was in a gray area. The bodies of criminals were often given to surgical schools, and the leftovers were used for leather. These bindings are neither displayed nor destroyed. Institutions consider them historical artifacts showing just how far people could go in the search for a unique edition. A sword without time. When archaeologists opened a flooded tomb in Hubei in 1965, they found a sword that had spent about 2,500 years in water. It was lying in a wooden scabbard without any conservation or protection, yet it looked as if it had been made recently. The blade shown had a clear pattern and sliced paper like a razor. An engraving on the surface bore the owner's name, Gujan, King of Yue. This sword isn't just a weapon, it was crafted with remarkable precision. The alloy, polishing, and scabbard fit were all top quality. The main thing is it survived centuries of war and oblivion, remaining intact. Scientists still don't know how. But the very fact that such an item has reached us in working condition is a discovery. This sword shows how objects can preserve history better than words. The uranium cubes of Haigerloch. Haigerloch, a small town in southwest Germany, has a chamber carved into the rock beneath its church. In 1944-1945, there was an attempt to start a nuclear reactor. Not a bomb, but specifically a device that could sustain a reaction on its own and operate for hours. Werner Heisenberg's team hung hundreds of uranium cubes on steel cables inside a tank. Heavy water at the bottom acted as a moderator, surrounded by protective layers, cables, and instruments. The setup is simple. Slowed neutrons are more likely to hit uranium, sustaining the chain reaction without external help. If this works, the setup is considered operational. So, what went wrong? There was a chronic shortage of material. Uranium arrived in batches of varying quality. There was little heavy water, and the chamber itself was cramped, so you couldn't space out the grid of cubes as much as you wanted. Engineers adjusted the suspension distance, rearranged clusters, and added rows, but the setup still wouldn't work. On paper, it seemed close, but in reality, it wasn't. In April 1945, the ALSOS, Allied Scientific Group, arrived. They opened the chamber, drained the tank, cut the suspensions, removed the uranium, and took the documentation and some of the equipment as trophies. The main items went to the United States. The rest were sent to scientific centers. From then on, the cubes started their own separate existence. Stories occasionally surface. One was found in a university basement, another in a physics classroom, and one in a museum. They're easy to spot. There's a loop mark on the edge and a darkened oxide layer on the surface. Sometimes cubes from Haigerloch appear at auctions without proper provenance. That's where the legends come from. Many paper certificates were lost. They were sunk during evacuation, buried in the forest, or taken by people. That's why rumors outlive the facts. The leading conspiracy theory claims the Haigerloch uranium cubes were used both in the reactor's grid and in the project's framework. DIGLOCK. Supposedly, the heavy metal was used as a shielding element or as components inside the bell-shaped machine under Silesia. Also, add the concrete ring in Ludwikovice, the violet, Servum 525, and Kamler to Haigerloch, and the version is ready. A kiss. In the church, uranium blanks were cast for the bell, which was supposed to dampen gravity. If you choose emotions, nothing is left. There are no blueprints, no material issue records for the bell, no photo assemblies where these cubes would fit in any way. The surviving samples from Haigerloch have a clear purpose in a conventional nuclear facility. Their geometry and traces of suspension indicate a reactor grid, not a time machine. Thus, the idea that the cubes are parts of the bell remains an unproven legend, much like the bell, which probably exists only in stories. Birth certificate. Before you is one of the oldest birth certificates created more than 4,000 years ago in the Sumerian civilization. It consists of 2 clay tablets, one with cuneiform writing and the other with a child's footprint. In ancient Mesopotamia, such tablets were used as official documents confirming a person's birth. The cuneiform text probably contains the child's name, the parents' names, the date of birth, and possibly even astrological predictions. The footprint served as a kind of personal signature, a unique way to identify the infant. This artifact shows how advanced the bureaucratic systems were in Sumer. Even back then, people understood the importance of documentation, and such records could be used to confirm inheritance or social rights. This offers a glimpse into the ancient world, which feels distant yet remains similar to ours. Fisukun's battle axe. It may look like a black obsidian boomerang, but it's actually a late Neolithic elite battle axe. A fisherman from the Norwegian lake Fisukun pulled it out with his net back in the 1780s. It weighed exactly 700 grams of solid basalt, smooth as polished marble. The dating, 2,850, 2,350 before Christ, places the artifact within the battle axe culture. The symmetry is striking. The blade is long, resembling a boat's keel. The handle hole is dried, drilled from both sides with stone tubular drills, an operation that took days. Why so much effort? Axes like these rarely have chipped edges. They were rarely used as weapons and were more likely status symbols. Holding it, everyone notices you have a rare material crafted by distant artisans. Getting a mirror shine is a different challenge. Basalt was polished with quartz sands until it developed a glossy finish. That's how the axe became a black mirror, which was reportedly used in rituals. Sunlight reflected off it, highlighting the owner's face and his link to the heavens. Today, the Fiskum axe is displayed at the Museum of History and Culture of Oslo, resembling a modern designer object under glass. But remember, this blade is 5,000 years old. Skull versus legend. Post-war Germany became surrounded by one of the most persistent legends. Bormann escaped. They say he was seen in Spain, Paraguay, and Argentina. He altered his looks, led Nazis, and wrote letters. Newspapers loved it. The party secretary's name made loud newspaper headlines and significantly boosted sales. The real outcome happened not in the jungle, but in Berlin. In 1972, during earthworks near the old tracks next to Lehrter Bahnhof, an excavator uncovered 2 skeletons. Nearby, there were fragments of the university. The documents had decayed, but the teeth remained. The forensic experts compared the jaws with the dental records of Verkushka's dentist. The distinctive fillings and bridges matched, known from Bormann's dental treatment. Hitler's second personal enemy was Ludwig Stumpfeger. This evidence was sufficient to confirm their identity. People love to argue because legends are more interesting than the truth. The bones have common injuries for those crossing combat zones, shrapnel, collapse damage, and nothing unusual. They found glass microparticles in the jaws. The explanation is simple: a vial of poison, bitten through in the night. Remnants of soil and construction debris at the site explain why the bodies weren't found sooner. Old embankments built over time, layer by layer, ultimately lead to genetics. In 1998, they compared the DNA with the closest maternal relatives. The match confirmed what teeth and X-rays showed 20 years ago. It is Bormann. Crystal skulls. In the antique shops of Paris at the end of the 19th century, perfectly polished skulls made from solid rock crystal appeared. No mention of excavations, just mysterious sellers claiming these were Maya relics that could sing under the moon and open doors to other worlds. The legend was soon embellished with details. They said there are exactly 13 such skulls, and that together they project a map of the stars or hold messages about vanished celestial mentors. Mediums claimed that the crystal resonates with brainwaves, decoding ancient wisdom, and modern lithotherapy masters sold activation sessions at the price of a piece of jewelry. When in the 1990s, the British Museum and the Smithsonian Institution examined the most famous skulls with a scanning electron microscope, the surface revealed characteristic traces of a rotating tool with a diamond coating. Such a tool would only appear after the 1860s. Additionally, the quartz structures have no internal cracks, which would occur if the skulls were hand-polished with sand. This suggests the artifact was likely made with a modern machine. But one skull, reportedly found in Belize before the surge of forgeries, still confuses experts. No receipt, no archaeological record, just stories from previous owners. They claim the crystal was polished for centuries, with water, quartz dust, and the patience of Maya craftsmen. Scientists are almost certain it's a later copy, but leave a small margin of doubt. What if it really is the work of ancient hands? Maybe we just haven't figured out what tool was used to create it yet. They replaced the alphabet. Quipu is a bundle of knotted ropes with a main thread and many colorful cords hanging from it. It was long thought the Incas used these knots to count items and taxes, like an ancient abacus. Linguists and programmers uploaded 21 complete quipus from a Peruvian museum into a neural network. The algorithm analyzed the color of the rope, how far it hung from the main thread, which knots were tied, and in what order. The machine quickly found repeating combinations, like identical words in a long text. The same knots on the yellow rope matched grain storage records, while knots on the red rope were linked to warrior lists. Scientists compared this with colonial Spanish documents and realized that the quipu conveyed meaning far richer than simple counting. For instance, green rope with 3 short knots usually indicates corn storage, while red with a double knot can signify an army tax. If the method is confirmed on a large number of samples, the quipu will no longer be considered just a knot calculator and will be recognized as a true writing system. Then the Incas should be moved from civilizations without writing to those who chose a rope-based alphabet instead. Yamashita's gold. One of the most thrilling and mysterious stories connected to World War II is the legend of Yamashita's gold. This story begins with the Japanese general Tomoyuki Yamashita, who, according to numerous accounts, managed to amass vast treasures captured during the Japanese military campaigns throughout Southeast Asia. The legend claims that at the end of the war, foreseeing inevitable defeat, Yamashita and his subordinates hid these treasures in various locations in the Philippines. Since then, Yamashita's gold has drawn treasure hunters, historians, and adventurers worldwide, leading to many expeditions and searches. But no expedition has yet been able to find definitive evidence of the existence of these treasures. The legend of Yamashita's gold has grown with layers of myths and speculation, saying that among the hidden riches were not only gold and precious stones, but also artifacts of incredible historical and cultural value. According to one version, the Japanese command used a complex system of codes and maps to mark the locations of the treasures, many of which were lost or destroyed in the final days of the war. In attempts to unravel the mystery of Yamashita's gold, dozens of expeditions were undertaken, some of which ended in tragedies and even deaths. This highlights the dangers associated with treasure hunting and the difficulty of searching in the jungles and mountainous regions of the Philippines. The story of Yamashita's gold continues to inspire a new generation of explorers. It serves as a reminder that many mysteries of World War II remain unsolved. And who knows, maybe someday someone will be able to solve the mystery and discover the lost treasures. Corrali Sub-Headquarters. In the forest near Berlin, among swamps and old pines, there is a place that was long considered a myth. It was simply called Corralja, a secret base from which German submarines were controlled, without having direct access to the sea. In the dense forest near Brno, there was a link to the Atlantic. When a submarine vanished in the ocean, its last signals were received here, from the air. This forest may look ordinary, but beneath the moss lie kilometers of cables, antenna rings, tunnels, and bunkers. all that remains of the underground communications headquarters of the Kriegsmarine, built in 1943. The Reich's top radio operators were once brought here. There were amplifiers, repeaters, cryptographic machines here, even backup generators and shockproof chambers. Corral was not just a communication center. It was the brain of the submarine war, hidden underground. When Soviet troops approached Berlin in 1945, the base personnel received orders to destroy the equipment. Documents were burned in the corridors, safes sunk, and some underground passages flooded. After the war, Corral disappeared from the map. For many decades, locals spoke about noises coming from underground, about antennas going deep into the ground, and about a blue light that sometimes broke through the moss. Legends grew since no one knew what remained beneath the forest. In 2019, archaeologists entered for the first time, expecting ruins, but discovering a labyrinth. Rooms with collapsed ceilings, slabs labeled for radio equipment, remains of switchboards, and aluminum plates with unit codes. One of the corridors is sloped downward toward a concrete shaft filled with water. Scanners showed that beneath it there is another level that has not yet been explored. The strangest thing is the acoustics. In the coral underground, sound behaves unnaturally. Footsteps are muffled, echoes return with a delay, as if there is a void underground that doesn't let the sound go. The local diggers call it the station's breath. There is an old British intelligence report dated June 1945. It says that the base might have tested the Drachenruf protocol, a radio cipher, for calling submarines with a range of over 5,000 kilometers. The document ends abruptly. To this day, no one has proven what the signal was or if it existed, but the archives confirm that one of the last radio interceptions of the Reich's submarines really coincided in time with the last communication session recorded near Bernau. Today, Corral stands in silence. The concrete is overgrown, the doors are locked, and the forest has reclaimed the land. Put your ear to the stone and you'll hear a faint hum. Maybe it's the wind or the memory of machinery, and everyone who went down there says the same thing. It feels like the station is just waiting for an order that never came. Sadzima Island. Sadzima Island, marked by history as one of the darkest places during World War II, earned the nickname Hell on Earth because of the brutal treatment of prisoners of war who were kept here in extremely harsh conditions. Located in a remote part of Japan, this island became a place of mass suffering and death for Allied soldiers who were captured by the Japanese army. Recent archaeological digs on Sadzima Island have revealed the harsh living conditions and circumstances surrounding the young man's death. The prisoners of war faced unbearable conditions, hunger, disease, and cruel treatment. The island, used for military purposes, was isolated from the rest of the world, which made it possible to hide what was happening here from the international community. The stories of survivors and historical documents testified to the inhumane ordeals, but only recent excavations have allowed us to fully grasp the scale of the tragedy. Discoveries on the island, prisoner of war belongings, unsent letters, and clothing fragments help reconstruct the lives and final moments of those who ended up here. A brewery from the time of Egypt's first rulers. Archaeologists have discovered the oldest brewery in the world, located in the Abydos necropolis in Egypt. This discovery reveals early brewing technologies and shows how resources were managed during pyramid construction. The complex has 8 large installations, each up to 20 meters long. Each of them contains 2 rows of 40 vessels, which were used to heat a mixture of grain and water. The classic beer brewing process? Scientists date the brewery to the era of Pharaoh Narmer, who is considered the founder of the first dynasty. Dr. Adams, who led the research, called this discovery an industrial-scale production and noted that it shows a high level of labor's organization. In ancient Egypt, the ability to manage mass distribution of resources and organize the workforce allowed the Egyptians to build grand structures, including the pyramids. Beer also played a key role in rituals. Large-scale production in Abydos shows its role in sacrifices, ceremonies, and rituals, confirming its importance in Egyptian royal power development. When the blood becomes liquid, Naples Cathedral. 3 times a year, the crowd gathers as the bishop lifts the silver reliquary with two sealed ampules, turns them, and the dark mass inside typically liquefies before all. This is the liquefaction of St. Januarius's blood, San Gennaro, the city's patron saint. The dates are set. September 19th is the feast day, the first Saturday of May marks the relics transfer, and December 16th commemorates being saved from Vesuvius's eruption. If the blood does not liquefy, Neapolitans take it as a troubling sign. The chronicles note years of failure by plague, earthquakes, and financial crises. St. Bishop from Benevento was executed around the year 305 in Pozzuoli. Legend says a Christian woman collected his blood in vessels, and in the Middle Ages, the relics went to Naples. In the chapel of San Gennaro, there are two ampules, a large one with a brown substance and a nearly empty smaller one. They cannot be opened, so direct chemical analysis is impossible. The Church describes the phenomenon, but does not provide an official scientific explanation. Scientists believe it is thixotropy. Some gels become fluid when shaken or heated and thicken again when left to stand. Chemists have demonstrated laboratory samples of blood-like mixtures based on iron-containing compounds, iron oxides, and gelatin proteins. With gentle hand warming and movement, they change from gel to liquid. Practical reasons include the cathedral's temperature, the reliquary's rotation, and the content's natural aging. The ampule composition is secret, inaccessible for analysis, making direct hypothesis verification impossible. Why does it work for believers? The ritual takes place in front of everyone. The priest lifts the ampules at the altar, tilts them, and the dark substance begins to flow down the glass and becomes lighter. The audience can see the process even from the back rows. For Neapolitans, this is not a chemical corpse, but a sign of the city's protection. A reasonable compromise is scientists suggesting possible mechanisms. The Church gives this meaning, and the police maintain the community's trust. Minoan Grill, the Museum of Prehistoric Thera, displays what appears to be a barbecue grill, though it's over 3,000 years old. The stone blocks of the Minoans from Santorini look like a miniature relief of a fortress wall. On the sides of the bulls' heads, there are slots for skewers on top, and below, a neat row of round holes. Air flowed through them to fan the coals, making the portable structure a true Bronze Age turbo grill. Identify and retain key details: sailors, acrotiri, goat meat, stone pans, smoky aroma, eruption, shorten descriptive phrases while keeping imagery, keep original perspective and setting, remove non-essential words, ensure proper grammar, shorten text. Imagine sailors in acrotiri tossing goat meat on stone pans as smoke drifts through streets now buried under volcanic ash. Scientists have long debated why the Minoans needed such mobility. A banquet on a ship, street trading, or a ritual feast where the offering was shared right at the sanctuary. Regardless of the theory, the technology works flawlessly. Air flows under the coals through holes, evenly heating the stone. Modern chefs do the same by placing a fan by the grill. Each time we bite into hot meat, which the Minoans perfected well before the Trojan War. Skulls with nails. In southeast Spain, archaeologists discovered 7 severed heads, some with large metal nails among ancient ruins. An unsettling find. Not through, but with force, as if the skulls were nailed to something. But why? Initially, they believed these were war trophies, such as enemy heads displayed to intimidate others. Chemical analysis of the bones revealed that some skulls weren't from outsiders. In one city, 3/4 were newcomers, but in another, nearly all were locals. And this changes everything. In one place, strangers were executed and displayed, while elsewhere, ancestors were kept as relics. The heads were found at homes, inside the dwellings. So this is no longer a demonstration of power, it's memory and respect. The Greeks wrote that the Gauls kept the heads of their enemies in boxes, while Spanish mercenaries carried them on spears. But in reality, things were more complicated. The mystery of Wewelsburg. Wewelsburg's castle shape sets the mood of the place. The north tower is shaped like an arrow pointing north. At the top is a round stone hall called the Obergruppenführersaal. It features 12 niches around smooth, undecorated walls and an empty center. A rosette of rays decorates the floor. Today it's called the Black Sun, but that's a post-war name. There's no such term in SS documents. Beneath the hall is a domed chamber with a central platform and fire niches. Standing in the center, your voice naturally amplifies, due to the precise geometry and acoustics, not mysticism. In 1939-40, Himmler wanted to turn the castle into the core of the order, expand the North Wing, gather an archive, a school, and a hotel for his own people. To display his power in stone, architect Hermann Bartels introduced the project. Prisoners from Niederhagen camp hauled the stone to Wewelsburg. The camp was built just for this construction. Remember this when admiring the symmetry above. Every straight seam cost someone's life and suffering. People often embellish things inside the tower. They mention nighttime initiations, blood, secret signs, and legends. But when asked for a proof, they provide plans, estimates, prisoner lists, and construction crew photos, not ritual objects. The real effect is a throneless hall, 12 identical niches, and a dome that echoes sound to the center. This works well for closed meetings, small groups, and showing unity, but not for mystical performances. The end of the war can be seen in the stone. In March 1945, the SS tried to blow up the northern part. Retreating leaves explosion traces, masonry chips, stains, soot, and repair seams can't be hidden. After the war, the castle became a memorial. The museum shows SS documents, reconstruction plans, Niederhagen camp history, and stories of those who carried the blocks. A meteorite that changed the course of Christianity. Abruzzo, central Italy, about 100 kilometers from Rome. Lake Sorrente, a round lake about 140 meters wide in the mountains, is believed by geologists to be a meteorite crater. Radiocarbon dating of charred wood from the ejecta gives a date of around 312 AD. This was when Constantine fought at the Milvian Bridge. The Swedish researcher Jens Ormjo suggested a simple version. A bright fireball and a mushroom-shaped dust cloud could have looked like a shining sign in the sky. Eusebius of Nicomedia recounts that after seeing a vision of the cross and light, Constantine had the symbol put on shields and won. Calculations give an energy of about 1 kiloton, comparable to a small nuclear warhead. The flash was visible from far away. In archaeology, there are indirect traces, a 4th century abandoned village catacomb mass burials, and local legends about the sun star splitting oaks. There's no direct evidence connecting the meteorite to Constantine's vision. It's only a hypothesis. The matching dates and high visibility make it especially convincing. A natural phenomenon may have prompted the decision to legalize Christianity in the Roman Empire. Atomic reactor, Oklahoma. Gabon, 1972. A laboratory in France receives a batch of uranium ore and notices something strange. The important isotope uranium-235 is reduced by half, as if the fuel has already been burned. The news spreads around the world with shocking information that an ancient nuclear power plant is hidden beneath the African jungle. Scientists rush to the site and drill dozens of wells. The picture that emerges is unexpected, but earthly. 2 billion years ago, a rare combination of conditions occurred here. Uranium-rich rock, pores between layers, sandstone gaps, and groundwater that slowly flowed through the ore. Water slowed the neutrons, starting the chain reaction, which stopped when it boiled. After cooling, the layer refilled with water. The reactor kept switching on and off for hundreds of thousands of years, leaving behind a distinctive set of rare isotopes. No man-made nuclear plant, no intervention from space visitors, just a natural geochemical furnace. But Oklahoma's story still grabs you. The planet can compress itself, build nuclear reactors without engineers, and has enough uranium, water, and time. Knights versus snails. Medieval manuscripts are not only sources of knowledge, but also a real treasure trove of mysterious and amusing illustrations. Special attention should be given to marginalia, odd drawings in manuscript margins. And one of the most curious themes found in English and French books of the 13th and 14th centuries is the battle between a knight and a snail. Why did the monks who copied books feel the need to depict such an absurd scene? One explanation is boredom. Monks entertained themselves by decorating pages with grotesques, which gradually became an art form. But such illustrations could also have hidden meanings. Perhaps the snail symbolized cowardice. Like the knight in armor, it hides in its shell. Some historians think this satirizes the aristocracy's slowness or mocks certain political groups. Be that as it may, these strange scenes still spark debates among researchers. And the battle between the knight and the snail remains one of the most mysterious medieval miniatures. Ritual rice. In the northern Rhytidian cave, archaeologists found rice husk imprints on ceramics that are at least 3,500 years old. The only traces are a thin starch film and phytoliths, but that's enough to confirm that the settlers reached Guam carrying rice across 2,300 kilometers of open ocean. Fields, terraces, and sickles were never found, indicating the grains were used for ritual, not food. Maybe once a year, to remind ancestral spirits of their distant home in Taiwan. In the hands of the islanders, rice turned from everyday food into a symbol of origin. That's why tiny pottery traces proved more important than a whole graveyard of bone harpoons. The Nazis' gold was finally discovered. In the summer of 2025, something began in Poland that archaeologists had feared for decades, and treasure hunters had dreamed of: official excavations of the legendary gold of the Reich. Quietly and methodically, without flashy headlines or sensational maps. Like investigating an old murder, ground-penetrating radars found an anomaly near Mykolaiski in the Kashubian forest. The depth is over 10 meters. The shape is rectangular with metallic reflections. For the first time in years, Polish authorities have issued an official excavation permit. The site has long been surrounded by legends. According to one version, this was the route of Ernst Koch's convoy, the former Gauleiter of East Prussia, who allegedly tried to take boxes of gold, platinum, and precious stones out of Königsberg. According to another version, there was an auxiliary SS warehouse here, where they brought not gold, but documents, paintings, and church relics. The archaeologists didn't guarantee treasures, yet the first few centimeters of soil revealed inoddities: fragments of metal seals, splinters, prongs from crates, wooden debris marked with the Bundesschlaghaus sign, an abbreviation that in the 1940s stood for Bundesschlaghaus, the state mint. The press reported the excavation quietly, but the adults were secretly as happy as kids. Every meter down felt like a step closer to solving one of the most sensational wartime legends in Europe. Old reports surfaced, SS protocols, records from Polish foresters about German Besfahrt trucks in April 1945. Everything was coming together into a story that had long been considered a fairy tale, but the deeper the work went, the more the fairy tale turned into a documentary thriller. At 7 meters deep, steel grate remains, lock fragments, and a bitumen layer suggested someone sealed a treasure. Scanners showed a void below. And then, for the first time in many years, the local authorities allowed journalists to show what it looks like when legend meets reality. The strangest part came later. 3 weeks before the season ended, the site opened, then Scopa was suddenly sealed off. Only a few specialists and police stayed on the site. Officially, it was due to collapse risk. Unofficially, because they found something metallic but not what they expected. From this point, the details differ. Some talk about a massive door at an angle, others about traces of a tunnel leading under the old road from the Reich era. The archaeologists are quiet and reports remain unpublished. The Polish Ministry of Culture made only one statement: engineering structure elements and objects requiring examination have been discovered. No photos or comments exist. It is in such an environment that myths are born. When a fact is not accompanied by an explanation, there is room for speculation. They say that one of the researchers who participated in the excavation resigned the day after the site was closed. Some say the Warsaw lab received not gold, but an object that required military supervision to handle. The secret message of Golub. In 2012, an amazing discovery was made in the chimney of a house in England, opening a new chapter in the history of military intelligence and communications during World War II. We're talking about the skeleton of Golub, who is believed to have been a carrier pigeon that died in the building. This discovery itself is already of historical interest. However, the real sensation was that a metal capsule containing an undeciphered message was found, with the bird's remains. This message is written on thin paper and consists of 27 lines of coded symbols that have not yet been deciphered. Researchers suggest that it could have been a secret message sent from the front to the Allied headquarters during critical operations. Pigeon mail was an important means of communication during the war because of its ability to deliver messages when other forms of communication were unavailable or too dangerous. The discovered message became a challenge for cryptographers and historians around the world who sought to decipher it. It may contain valuable information about military operations, intelligence, or even details about the location of a military unit. This discovery also highlights the importance and uniqueness of pigeon mail as a means of delivering crucial messages, which was especially relevant during times of global conflict. Interestingly, the search for the key to this cipher continues to this day. Egyptian towers? When people hear about the homes of ancient Egyptians, most imagine squat huts made of mud brick. Excavations at Emet in the northern delta radically changed this picture. Archaeologists found a late-period neighborhood, an entire street of 4 to 5-story tower houses, forming a dense wall along the processional road to the temple of Wajet. The estimated height of 12 to 15 meters for the 7th century before Christ equals a modern 5-story building. The lower levels are packed with grain silos and beer vats. Above them are living rooms with narrow doors, and higher up are covered terraces where date pits and bronze sisters of the goddess Hathor have been preserved. In the evening, people held musical rituals here, not just dinners. 5 steps from the doors, a limestone path leads to the temple of Wajet. The slabs are so well polished they still reflect the setting sun, and the cult columns remain where 7th century before Christ craftsmen placed them. Before Christ. It's like a mini Memphis in the province. High rises, a market, a temple, and a sacred road packed into one small area. 3 repair layers, 2 in the masonry, show that the towers were inhabited for at least a century and a half. And on the facades, you can still see reliefs with Harpocrates and green Phaeon Sushabti. Religion and daily life literally shared a wall here. Met is also challenging the old stereotype of single-story Egypt. A fingerprint from the past. During the Temple Mount sifting project in Jerusalem, archaeologists washed soil that had been removed from the slope of the Temple Mount. Among the grains of soil, a tiny clay bulla appeared. This is a seal used in ancient times to close bags or vessels. It measures 13 millimeters in diameter. One side bears a clear inscription belonging to Yediah, son of Asayahu. The writing style and carbon dating date the artifact to late 7th or early 6th century before Common Era. During the First Temple period, the name Asayahu is mentioned in the Bible. If it's the same person, the seal might have been his son's, suggesting a high-ranking official's family was involved in official matters. On the back, the owner's fingerprint remains, a rare personal code of an ancient official. The surface was examined with reflectance transformation imaging using various lighting, followed by a 3D model of the script's relief. The find is important because it transfers the biblical name from text to the material layer and confirms the existence of the administrative system of Judea on the eve of the Babylonian destruction of the temple. A collection of SS rings. The item is small but heavy, a silver Totenkopf ring with a skull on the front, runes on the sides, oak leaves, and thin ribbons. Typically, it includes 3 elements: the owner's name, presentation date, and a facsimile. Such rings were made in Munich by the jeweler Gara. They were presented from the mid-1930s until 1944. It wasn't a purchase but a sign of loyalty. When leaving the SS, the ring had to be returned, and in case of death, it was to be sent to headquarters. That's how the legend of a shared collection began. By rule, the rings of the deceased were to be returned to a central location. In retellings, this place soon became Wewelsburg, the lower hall, the fire's niche, the order's safe. Then it becomes a thriller. Thousands of personalized rings in one room, a list of the dead guards, Himmler with the key, the war ends, and the collection vanishes. What do we have today besides these stories? Single rings with clear engravings, names, dates characteristic of Himmler. Museums, police archives, and collectors hold documents on presentations and recipient lists. Post-war protocols of confiscated items include rings as line items with symbols. But we don't have a single discovery of a mass accumulation of rings. No boxes from one location with hundreds of pieces. No archival inventory of rings with a list of names. Despite the market's familiarity with the ring, if the order's box had really surfaced, proving its existence would be a matter of 2 photographs and a single registry. Why does the legend still live on? First of all, the item is very personal. On the inside, there's a name and a date. Secondly, the end of the war creates the perfect curtain behind which the further movement of the rings can be hidden. Some artifacts were destroyed in explosions and fires, others taken as trophies, and some vanished into private hands without records. Thirdly, there are a lot of fakes. After the 60s, the market was flooded with freshly made Totenkopf rings with fantasy engravings. Another important detail is rarely mentioned. The rings weren't numbered. Unlike pistols with serial numbers, they're verified in other ways. By the style of the ornament, the depth of the engraving, the type of facsimile, the handwriting of a particular workshop, by how the letters in the name are arranged and how the date is set. And if all of that checks out, then what you have in front of you is very likely authentic. But that's only one story, not a trove of rings. It focuses on one person and presentation day, not a hidden stash. In short, the item exists, has been studied and described, with authentic pieces and many copies in circulation. The myth about the piggy bank is a convenient story that nicely wraps up the topic. Where did the rings of the fallen go? You can blame this piggy bank for all the rings that were given, returned, or made for new officers. This way, you can expose some Nazis who, after the war, returned to leadership positions in Germany or any other country. But no confirmed common stash exists in Wewelsburg, the surrounding forests, or the archives. The SS Silver Treasure of Herr Sopa. The SS Silver Treasure of Herr Sopa became a major underwater discovery, creating a sensation in treasure and exploration circles. The British merchant ship SS Herr Sopa was sunk by a German submarine in February 1941 during the World War II. At the time, it was en route from India to the United Kingdom with valuable cargo, including a large amount of silver. During the war and facing a metal shortage, the United Kingdom actively used sea routes to transport raw materials and valuables from its colonies. GRSO carried more than 200 tons of silver bars intended to finance the war effort and support the country's economy. The ship's sinking hurt Britain's resources. The wreckage of the GRSO was discovered in 2011 at a depth of more than 4,700 kilometers in the North Atlantic, made possible by modern technologies for searching and studying underwater objects. Recovering the silver was very challenging because of the depth, weather, and technical limits, but most of the silver was successfully retrieved. The Ark of the Covenant. In Axum, Ethiopia, behind the Church of St. Mary's thick walls, locals claim the true Ark of the Covenant is guarded. A box made of acacia wood covered with gold, 2 carrying poles, and a lid with winged figures. Only monarch may enter the sanctuary. All that the pilgrims see is a dark silhouette under a veil, and stories about lightning that flashes if you touch it without a blessing. Some enthusiasts interpret the Ark's description as a diagram of an early electrical device. The exterior really does resemble a capacitor, and the ornate wings on top are easy to imagine as contacts. In our time, people have even tried to create similar models, and they really did produce a weak voltage from accumulated static charge. Skeptics argue that in terms of its size, the Ark is no different from an ordinary portable box for scrolls, and the sparks that pilgrims talk about could very well have been caused by static electricity in the dry mountain air. It's impossible to verify these theories for now. No one has opened the relic, and X-rays and wood analysis are forbidden. While the debates continue, there could be an ordinary reliquary behind the closed door, or perhaps a device whose purpose we have yet to uncover. Venera and Sparcinti. In December 2022, a Polish farmer near Kalabrzeg dug up a 12-centimeter figurine of a woman with pronounced hips and a narrow waist from his field. 3 years in the lab, dating complete about 6,000 years. Early Neolithic era electron microscopy revealed flint cutter traces, and the clay's spectrum matched the Parsenta River floodplain. So, local landowners made the figurine, not traders? Why does that matter? Northern Poland was seen as peripheral to Venus culture, with classic Paleolithic and Neolithic goddesses found in southern Europe. Now the Baltic gets its own Mother Earth and moves the boundary of the fertile cult zone hundreds of kilometers to the north. Ghostly radars. On the shore, it looks like a concrete circle in the grass. Closer, threaded rods protrude from it, with scars from cable ducts around the edge. A square foundation from a small building is nearby. This site isn't for a rural warehouse. Freya stood here, an early warning radar able to detect planes over the North Sea. A bit farther ahead is another sign, a large ring with 4 lugs, reinforcements, and a thick cable conduit. This is the spot for the Furtzberg, the anti-aircraft gun targeting radar. 2 circles, and before your eyes, a piece of the air war comes to life. Such sites stretch in a chain along the coast and around the cities. Some areas have just slabs and rusty rebar left, while others still show the concrete ears. At the Mass Farm, the layout is always clear. The antennas circle, the cable trench for the generator, and sometimes a small communications bunker. If you come across an elongated rectangle with a bunch of anchor holes in the area, it could have been a Wasserman tall lattice mast. If you spot traces of an unusual pie with multiple mount levels, think of the Hermitage Jagdschloss, the circular radar that scanned the entire sky. At one of the sites near the shore, a burnt ceramic insulator and fragments of thick cables with fabric braiding were found. A powerful station operated there, and when they retreated, they destroyed everything. In the forest, far from the sea, there's a round slab and a long, narrow foundation for the calculation cabin. This was a standard anti-aircraft battery setup. Würzburg gave exact coordinates, and the battery fired where the antenna indicated. The real interest starts when you link these spots into a defensive line. When early warning radar detects a target, it alerts the sector with a night fighter on duty. There, a searchlight grove and guidance await. A Himmelbett operator assists the pilot. They called the system cells, where radar, searchlights, fighters, and anti-aircraft guns were unified. Little remains from this complex system. Circles, trenches, small bunkers. It turns out that's enough to understand how they monitored the sky here. There are also paradoxes. Sometimes there's a circle, and right next to it, nothing. The station was moved, the mast removed, but the anchor plate stayed as a trace. Sometimes it's the opposite. The circle is gone, but the cable entry communication booth remains. These small structures let you reconstruct the routes of the lines. You come across camouflage elements. In the embankment nearby, there are pieces of nets, hooks for fake structures. Such places clearly explain why the Allies sometimes missed their targets. The photos show a farm, but the actual antenna has been dismantled and relocated to a backup site. The art collection. In 2012, a discovery in Munich shocked the global creative community. In a modest-sized apartment, a collection of paintings confiscated by the Nazis was found, valued at $1 billion. Among the works were pieces by masters such as Marc Chagall, Pablo Picasso, and Henri Matisse. This collection represents a lost treasure of European art, many of which were considered missing for decades. The paintings fell into the hands of the Nazis as a result of a large-scale campaign to confiscate works of art that the regime considered degenerate or belonging to Jewish families. Many of these works were taken from their owners in the pre-war and wartime years, and after the war were considered lost or destroyed. The discovery of this collection became possible thanks to investigative actions by the German authorities who were investigating a case of tax fraud. The investigation led to a search of the apartment where these priceless works were discovered. The collection included both well-known masterpieces and lesser-known works, which nevertheless have great artistic and historical value. The discovery caused an international stir, as it raised questions about ownership rights, restitution, and moral responsibility. For many descendants of Jewish families who were deprived of their treasures by the Nazis, this discovery offered hope for the return of lost works of art that have become symbols of their history and heritage. Old gramophone records. In 1938, Chinese archaeologist Chi Pute entered a cave in Bayankara Ula and saw smooth stone gramophone records there. Each disc was palm-sized with a center hole. The front has a spiral groove, and under a magnifying glass you can see tiny hieroglyphs. The text recounts how the Dropa, little people from a distant star, crashed in the mountains 12,000 years ago. Details soon surrounded the legend. They mentioned 716 discs, a storage room at Peking University, and how one emitted a pure, nearly musical electric impulse during an experiment. But when ethnographers tried to see the artifacts, they couldn't find them in any museum in China. Photos of the discs only surfaced in magazine clippings from the 1960s. The hieroglyphs were translated by German reporter Reinhard Wegerer, who later admitted he based his work on local guide stories without seeing the original. Archaeologists from Gansu and Sichuan only know about the savannah, where round burial slabs with shallow spirals are found, but there is no microtext or cosmic chronicle there. And yet the story lives on. Whenever a plain stone disc is found in a cave, people on social media wonder if it's a lost Dropa disc. So far, not a single genuine disc like that has been shown to the public. Imagination keeps spinning, as if the spiral on the stone itself is creating a new legend, manuscript, surprise. Imagine opening a medieval folio, expecting prayers, but finding a full-fledged attraction instead. Some pages flare up with huge initials, others are covered with Turonian notes, an ancient shorthand that only a couple of dozen specialists today can decipher on the entire planet. One spread shows letters forming constellation shapes as if the author merged a school primer with the night sky. You turn the page and spot a small scribble in the corner. Pisset's quickly tested his pen, jotting a mini potpourri from the poems about Birdswall, where wide margins take up half the space. Why waste costly parchment? This emptiness isn't truly empty. Medieval students used these margins for marginalia, and later those margins protected books from mold. The humid air damaged the book's edges, but the text stayed intact. There's also a completely unexpected format, the Bat Book. This almanac hung upside down from the belt, unfolded to show a calendar, lunar phases, and a yearly list of saints. The purple spots in the corners are scars from mold. The manuscript was once stored in damp conditions, and microbes managed to eat away at the pages. Scientists are now counting fungal growth rings, similar to those on a tree. Just imagine how much information is hidden in these cosmetic defects. They use them to date the library's moves and even revise our view of that era's climate. Visual. Easter eggs transform a manuscript from mere text into a real quest. Each note and unexpected tab connects us directly to those who wrote, read, and used this book centuries ago. The holy relic of the Reichsmarschall. Göring's estate, Karen Hall, is named after Karen Axelina Hulda Fock, a Swedish noblewoman who died in 1931. Göring was so devoted to her that he dedicated the estate to her memory. In the Spreewald Forest, a house museum was built about his life, featuring hunting halls, collections, and Karin's mausoleum. This is how the holy relic of the Reichsmarschall comes into being. Love turned into architecture. The story seems almost unreal. Karin is first buried with honors in her homeland. Then, as Göring's political career grows, her body is moved to a special chamber in Karin Hall, Germany. A stone slab, sarcophagus niche, torch, hunting emblems, coats of arms, and loyalty inscriptions. He treats the place like his own temple, bringing guests there. In speeches and interviews, he presents Karin as a symbol of eternal pure love. For propaganda, it was perfect. A marshal who doesn't drink, doesn't cheat, and honors his wife's memory. A troubling story begins in spring 1945 as the front nears Berlin. Göring orders Karin Hall destroyed to keep it from the Russians. Before the explosion, the sarcophagus is opened and the remains are hidden in a nearby forest. Some say they were taken to a shelter in a communications vehicle with the location changed twice in a week. Years later, when they retrace the route, they find not one place, but a series of secret burial sites. In the confusion, legends arose. Some claim the ashes dissolved in a lake, others that looters stole the sarcophagus, or it was moved to a monastery crypt and replaced with a copy. As more people share their stories, it's clear everyone has their own ending, including a practical one from Karen Kahl. After the war, stone from the hunting halls was reused for houses and barns. Police reports mention unmarked marble slabs and carved railings taken from the annex. The mausoleum is gone, but its details remain nearby, underfoot, in the homes of locals. The strangest final identification. Karen's remains are eventually found and returned to Sweden in the early 1950s. However, official reburial requires examinations, comparisons, private letters, and lengthy bureaucracy. Notes appear in the newspapers. Did they return the right one? The family agrees the documents match, but lingering legends persist since rumors surrounded the story for so long. In the end, the fate of the woman with whom Göring lived for several years turns into a post-war puzzle. Where was she in 1945? Who was moved? And why was the place changed? More questions than answers remain. Inside, all was subject to this cult. A separate room for her letters and photos, a locket with her name on the owner's chest, a portrait of Karen in every hall, select guests quietly visiting the mausoleum before the hunt, and the estate name, Karen Hall, sealing every invitation. Personal history became routine. The date of death served as remembrance, and each important meeting started at the sarcophagus. A pyramid lost to prehistory. Near Yonaguni Island, at a depth of 30 meters, there is a stone pyramid lying on the ocean floor. Even the steps, terraces, arches, and openings seem like part of a building, not just random rocks. The structure is around 10,000 years old, predating the Sumerians, Egyptians, and the earliest cities. Scientists remain divided. Some think it's natural, while others see Yonaguni as evidence of an unknown civilization. If they're right, it could completely change our understanding of when and how human history began. What if this isn't just a mistaken trace of history, but the trace of some civilization? What if there's a history hidden beneath this ocean that we don't know about? The most terrifying tribe. Travel blogger Daniel Pinto caused a real shock when he published a video with the WWII tribe from Papua New Guinea. In the video, which has gathered over 17 million views, he shows a meeting with the silent members of the tribe, guarding a sacred waterfall. The WWII people are dressed in costumes made of mud and clay, and their masks resemble spirit birds with long noses and fierce expressions. They guard the waterfall from outsiders and appear intimidating. However, viewers have questioned the video's authenticity. Some commenters say the most fearsome tribe would never allow a blogger so close. Others joke that their costumes look like fashionable outfits. Despite the controversy, the video has attracted tourists' attention to the region. Now the travel agency mentions WWII as a tourist destination, offering guests eco-lodges and an introduction to the tribe's culture. And what do you think? Is this tribe real, or just another way to attract naive tourists? Write your opinion in the comments below the video. Subtitles by Dima Torzak. Africa and Israel. In the south of Israel, in the Negev desert, archaeologists have been studying the Tel Malhata Hill, one of the sites associated with the biblical city of Malada. Among the 6th century finds near Christian burials, they discovered something unexpected: 5 hand-carved figurines made of ebony. The material is Ceylon ebony, found only in southern India and Sri Lanka, which is mysterious. However, the most surprising aspect is the faces. The figurines depict male and female torsos with expressive features, broad cheekbones, flat noses, and a high forehead. Researchers are convinced that these images have African features. They wear large headdresses with holes, likely for using the figurines as pendants or amulets. The burials are Christian, with nearby glass vessels, bronze and stone jewelry, and alabaster items. Amid all this, some figurines clearly originate from another culture and world. This isn't just a trade item, it held significance. These may have been ancestral images or symbols of the homeland that survived after adopting a new faith. Byzantine Palestine was a crossroads for caravans, ships, and merchants from Africa, Arabia, and India. These figurines may have traveled hundreds of miles, passed through many hands, and ended up here among the tombstones. For archaeologists, this rare find reveals how closely cultures were intertwined. Propaganda stone architecture. If you seek the Reich's language in stone, you'll find it in the amphitheaters. Built in the early 1930s for public gatherings and rituals, they became ideal for controlling emotions. Stone, steps, fire, and a voice carrying without a microphone. The most notable Ting sites are on Heidelberg's Heiligenberg and the Berlin Arena, which was then called Dietrich Eckart Stage, today's Waldbühne. They all look alike: semicircles, tall backdrops, hidden passages, torch spots, and stone alcoves for musicians and equipment. From above, it appears as romantic ruins, but on site you see the engineering: neat drainage, precise geometry, column placements, and people becoming part of the design. Architecture shapes behavior, standing, listening, and responding together. Here it's easy to understand how the ritual worked: entering in a long line down the slope, so that in the process, everyone had time to become a single body. A stone teleprompter sits on the platform. The host stands on the central axis, so the backdrop reflects the voice. Pockets on the sides housed flag bearers, while higher spots held lighting and torch circles. The extra steps aren't for the audience, but for formations. Signs, slogans, or symbols are easy to display, and their meaning is instantly clear from above. There are plenty of myths surrounding these places. Astronomical connections are especially popular. They say the stages and passages capture the solstice. Sometimes there's coincidence in certain places, but strong directing is enough. No need to search for cosmic meaning. The real magic is in the acoustics and geometry. If you stand on the central stone of Heidelberg and speak in a normal voice, you can be heard clearly in the upper rows. It creates a sense of wonder, even though it's simply a well-calculated sound reflection. After the war, these venues were handled differently. At Heidelberg Tinstite, technical features are clear: a narrow backstage service passage, sidewall niches for cables and torches, and drainage under the stands leading to the ravine. This prevents flooding after rain. The upper rows show the marching interval steps with mark spacing matching a standard banner's width. Berlin Waldbühne. It's designed with a wide orchestra pit, fan-shaped exits under the stands, and spotlight platforms at the edges. The stages are meant for a front view of the columns, not a circle. They're two versions of the same concept. The stone's geometry guides movement and gathering. No need for rituals or speeches. The metal rod. How can we explain this mysterious artifact? Inside a stone found in the Mazong Mountains of China, collector Jiling Wang discovered a metal rod with threads resembling a screw. But what's most strange is that solid rock formed around it, which suggests that the find could be millions of years old. Some have suggested that it's a meteorite with an alien artifact inside. Others believe it's an ancient man-made object that, for unknown reasons, ended up in the earth and turned into a fossil. Skeptics think it's just a rare natural formation, and the screw is actually a fossilized marine organism. But the most interesting thing is that similar discoveries have already been found in different parts of the world. Is this a coincidence or proof of ancient technology? For now, this artifact remains one of the most mysterious archaeological enigmas: the triangular shield. Archaeologists have excavated a rare Roman watchtower 20 kilometers southeast of Sofia, Bulgaria's capital. It has an equilateral triangle base, each side about 7 meters long, coin dating to Emperor Caracalla, late 2nd century AD. This is rare in the Roman Empire. Most outposts were square or circular. The question arises, why a triangle? The tower's narrow tip faces the slope, so a battering ram or stones slide along the wall without damaging the masonry. Inside they found stone boxes, a well, and remnants of a wooden floor that was rebuilt during the Byzantine and Second Bulgarian empires. Similar forms are found only at the border with watchtowers. The Romans called these borderlines the limes, referring to the full system of ramparts, roads, and fortresses along the border. In Bulgaria, this is the earliest example of irregular planning. The engineers opted for geometry tailored to the mountainous terrain rather than a standard template. Today, the tower belongs to the Irvich Museum complex. It shows that the builders knew how to deviate from standards when local conditions required it. The secret that was known in the CIA. In 2002, declassified CIA documents were made public. One of them was simply titled Report on Noah's Ark. It mentions a strange object on the slope of Mount Ararat. The formation looks like the hull of a huge ship. Rumors about this place have been circulating since the mid-20th century. Here's what's strange. The CIA used reconnaissance planes, then satellites, all due to this anomaly. According to the official version, nothing special was found in the images, but dozens of requests to publish the footage, especially from 1974, were denied. Why hide the images if there's nothing on them? Later, researchers collected soil samples from this place. They found marine organisms, even though Mount Ararat is at a high altitude of 4,420 meters. Does this mean that water really was here? The same water from the biblical flood? It may seem like a coincidence, but there are too many to ignore. People have avoided this place for too long. Continuation. The flag that no one found. This banner had its own biography. longer than that of many people. The cloth was from Munich, 1923. After the beer hall putsch, it was marked by the blood of the fallen and became a relic. It was used to consecrate newcomers at party rallies. The standard bearer's name, usually just one to preserve the cult, was memorized along with the standards. At parades, it didn't march with the crowd, but was escorted at the front under guard. Not just anyone was allowed to touch the banner. Only those who were permitted could approach to pass on a part of the sacred status to their own standards. Next comes what people prefer not to remember. In peacetime, any cult needs preservation and a schedule. Bloodfeign was kept in Munich in the party premises, where it was returned after the rituals. The records listed hall numbers, congress trips, and a storage protocol. The fetish lived by a schedule. Ceremonial removal, a short ritual, then the return trip to the cabinet, where it waited until the next important day. The Relics finale started before 1945 during the bombings. Archives, offices, and halls, all once permanent, had to be concealed and moved. Some say the banner was evacuated, others claim it stayed in Munich until the end. After the city fell, its whereabouts became unknown. Some say the Allies took it with other party items, and it appears in inventories under an anonymous number. Another version claims the banner was burned in the same fire that destroyed the building's paper archives. The third version says it ended up privately owned, undocumented, cut up, and scattered as historical souvenirs. Why did they so easily part with such a sacred object? Because at the moment of collapse, sacredness stops protecting. When the legend falls, only the fabric and shaft of the artifact remain. All the security measures, passes, guards, and lists vanish overnight. And if there's no clear label on the box, the item just becomes an ordinary thing. The flag worshipped for decades dissolved among boxes, safes, fire, and strangers' hands. Fana's dishes reappeared many times after the war, in news articles, eyewitness reports, and auctions of originals. None of the claims held up. The fabric is too new, the paint is from the wrong era, or the origin story fails at the first date. This is a rare case where what's missing says more than any exhibit. The flag they built eternity around did not outlast the institution that created it. What's left are photos, ceremony records, flag bearers' names, and emptiness where the item was. The Guardian from Moku. On the highlands of Peru, in the Mojo region, there stands a stone statue. It's not very tall, simple in appearance, but nevertheless evokes strange feelings. At first, it appears to be a Tiwanaku-style carved monolith. Defined lines, static pose, hands on the stomach. The longer you look, the more the figure stands out from its context, as if it came not from this time and not even from this continent. The Mojo Waka statue stands on a cross-shaped base resembling the Andean Chacana, an ancient symbol with each side representing a world level, upper, middle, and lower. In this case, the cross is twisted in a rare clockwise spiral, and it may indicate a ritual significance that has been lost over time. However, what draws the most attention is not the style or the symbolism, but the strange similarities. The statue's pose, with hands lowered on the stomach and a direct gaze, unexpectedly resembles the Moai of Easter Island, and even earlier stone steles from Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. The same composition, the same gestures, the same restraint, vastly different cultures, separated by thousands of kilometers and centuries, yet they seem to share the same visual language. A flint hand drill. In the early 1960s near Kankakee, Illinois, a farmer digging a basement unearthed a flint rod tightly encircled by a stone ring, resembling a modern bearing. The photo appeared in every newspaper's forbidden artifacts section, and the discovery was soon named a flint hand drill. Native Americans reportedly had advanced drilling technology before steel existed. Legend says the ring rotated freely without wearing its seat. The tool's polish marks are as fine as those made by a diamond. However, no experts have examined the artifacts. After the owner's death, the item vanished into a private collection. Illinois museums only display ordinary micro-drills, small flint tips once used to drill shells, and bone. Archaeologists who've seen the original photo think the drill may just be a worn fragment of a 19th century clay pipe, smoothed by time to look polished. Until the stone is examined microscopically, the story remains. It will keep filling online catalogs with so-called out-of-place artifacts. Let me remind you how quickly one unclear photo becomes evidence of prehistoric drilling tools. The Nazis' Holy Grail. This artifact is becoming more and more popular over time, especially in the context of studying the esoteric beliefs of the Nazi regime. It's true that a number of top Nazi leaders, including Himmler, were interested in the occult and mystical traditions. However, it's important to understand that most of the information on this topic is based on myths and speculation. However, some believe the Nazis actually searched for the Holy Grail, hoping to use its supposed powers for their own ends. Combined with the archaeological expeditions organized by the Ahnenerbe and the SS Research Institute, this theory becomes even more interesting. Some historians say Nazi expeditions to Tibet and other regions aim to find relics like the Grail, but there is no clear evidence for this. There is also an opinion that the Grail could have been located in southern France in the Cathar region, and that the Nazis conducted excavations there. This myth was further inflated thanks to popular culture and books. In a number of works, the Nazis are depicted as chasing after sacred relics, including the Grail, to gain supernatural power or justify their ideology. Scientific and historical research shows that while the Nazis were interested in the occult and mysticism, most such claims are myths. Nevertheless, the idea that the Nazis might have searched for the Holy Grail has become one of the most recognizable and exciting themes in modern pop culture. When the Sahara was an ocean, now it seems lifeless. Endless sand, sun-scorched rocks, rare caravans. But once, millions of years ago, the Sahara was completely different. It was an ocean, the Tethys Ocean, with huge warm waters inhabited by ancient creatures. Ammonites, sea urchins, corals, giant reptiles. All of these lived where today only lizards barely survive. Geologists found delta and riverbed traces along the shorelines, which is significant. Water once splashed here, but after the ocean vanished, a new story began. Hundreds of thousands of years later, people settled this land, ancient ones, whose name still echoes in the sands. The Berbers, or as they call themselves, the Amazigh, descendants of those who survived climate change, vanishing rivers, and dried lakes. They remained when others left. Their rock paintings in Tassili Najjer are a true library of prehistoric consciousness. People hunting with bows, celebrations, scenes of love and war, even images of beings with rounded helmets, as if from another reality. Some believe this is an allegory, while others see it as proof of contact with another intelligence. But the essence is the same. When the Sahara had not yet come to life, the Berbers already knew how to tell their stories. They knew where to find water, how to endure hot days and cold nights. They ruled Numidia, traded with Rome, fought with Egypt, and then disappeared from the map, but not from the land. The Arab conquests forced them from cities to deserts and mountains, but their culture survived. In remote villages, the Berber language is still spoken, preserving a memory thousands of years old. In the desert, remnants of a much older past endure. Stone mushrooms look like ordinary rocks, but their striking shape stands out on closer inspection. A massive cap of hard stone rests on a thin, eroded stem. These formations are the result of differential erosion. Wind-driven sand smooths soft rocks over years, leaving hard ones standing. Each mushroom is a temporary but proud marker of time. Their stems gradually become thinner and one cap will collapse. They live for hundreds of thousands of years, yet are still doomed, like the ocean and civilization. And only memory in stones, in pollen, in sand survives everything. Are there any other traces left of this ancient civilization? And what can they tell us about a past we still do not understand? The last makeup of Goering. There is a legend that Hermann Goering, who was considered one of the most influential people in Nazi Germany, second in power only to Hitler, painted his nails and wore women's clothes before his end. It's striking, so it attaches to everything already known about him. To silk robes, furs, perfumes, and theatrical uniforms with medals. Goering loved flashy fabrics and luxury. At Karen Hall receptions, he wore elaborate tunics. At home, he showed off robes and pajamas, enjoyed aromatic blends, and used powder. Cartoonists quickly included these details in their work and people started saying Goering painted his nails and wore women's clothes. Photographs of his personal belongings show a taste for displaying status: velvet, silk, furs, massive rings, custom tailoring. This is 1930s, 1940s, men's luxury elevated to operetta, suiting a powerful aesthete's image perfectly. That's how the theater marshal's endless nicknames started. Sharp's stories came from the same roots. They're easy to quote. They sound like the ultimate disgrace. No evidence exists, no documents, purchases, photos, or inventory. Nuremberg intensified the controversy. After Hermann Goering was arrested, they stripped him publicly, displayed his closets of robes, discussed his toiletries, and marveled at his meticulous shirt folding and perfect creases. All this was labeled femininity, but it was actually narcissistic self-demand. The psychological portrait blended with caricature, and May moved on. Everyday details further reinforce the legend. Auction sales of items from his wardrobe have been preserved. Silk underwear, a dressing gown, and personal toiletries. For the media, that's enough. Silk is feminine. It was fashionable at the time and common for wealthy people to surround themselves with expensive fabrics. There's no mystery here, just a carefully built facade. Goering relished being the Reich's first dandy and performed the part with absurd diligence. This story of him painting his nails comes from retellings. Someone mentioned the shine, but there are no photos or records to show. The inventories list search photos, silk robes, lingerie, jewelry, and perfumes. No direct evidence shows nail painting or wearing women's clothing. The simple conclusion: there was ostentatious luxury. No evidence of nail polish or cross-dressing. So it's still an impressive-sounding rumor without any supporting evidence or documentation. In this video, I only include verifiable information. Legends will stay legends. Thanks for watching until the end. Goodbye, everyone.